Good afternoon, everyone. Seeing the protocol has already been observed. My name is Tangeni, joined by Masenzenzi and Senzeni and Curtis. Stella's not here. She went back to the UK. So our topic is focusing on protecting and conserving rock art and rock art in the discourse. So Curtis will be presenting. He really wanted to present. He said, just give me the mic, I will take it away.
Good afternoon, everybody. So when we think about rock art and its conservation and its place in the discourse, we have to start by, I will start by mentioning that we are dealing with a very valuable, non-renewable resource. There are many types of rock arts. For instance, in France, there's a lot of rock art caves, and the rock art is on the walls in the caves, and there's also rock shelters and so forth. So during this discussion, I will try to make some examples, especially between South Africa and France, just to give a little bit of different perspectives of rock art. So in South Africa, we have a lot of open air caves, and rock art is just like on the ground in many cases. So there's a lot of conservation issues that we can look into. So let's also then go into the importance of rock art. Rock art is a human expression. It's part of the ancient people. In South Africa, it's mainly the Kun and the Kwe, or not Kun and Kwe, but the San people as a whole, who we associate with the rock art, and also the colored people of the modern day society. So it provides insights into the ways of life in the past. Then when you put it into the context of France, it's based on the sites we have visited, mostly the Magdalenian people. For example, when you look at perhaps 15, 17,000 years ago. So when we speak about rock art also, there's a lot of threats that sort of like makes it a challenge to conserve rock art. So for instance, these threats come in the form of weathering, graffiti, mining and development projects. So what this then does is it sort of creates problems for intangible heritage as well. For instance, especially in the South African context, you find a lot of people who traditionally would like to then go and have rituals at rock art sites. For instance, the current day San people, the Kun and the Kwe people, they would like to go and engage with having rituals at rock arts. For them, it was part of life, but also then due to conservation measures, for instance, in most cases, they are not allowed to go and do what they believe is their way of life. So, as I've mentioned, there's also weathering, such as graffiti on the walls and so forth. And limestone as well, another major threat to weathering. So when we put the concept of conservation and protection into this discussion, we have to think about how we can better manage and conserve and protect the rock art. So one of those ways is to document the rock art. So by documenting rock art, we refer to taking photographs of the rock art and so forth, creating virtual exhibitions, and then also then displaying that perhaps through interpretative centers, such as the National Museum of Prehistory, where we are at the moment. Another way is to sort of have signage, because, for example, in Southern Africa, you find rock art sites where there's a very limited amount of signage and awareness for the community, for instance. That's why they also don't know the value of the rock art, which does affect or lead to people damaging the rock art. There's an example recently in the Drakensberg in August this year, but I will touch on it later in the presentation. Another way is to cover the cave floor with granite slabs and so forth. We can also then sort of try to conserve or mitigate damages to rock art through research, where we can write about ways of better preserving and conserving rock art. My colleague will touch more on the point of the current slide.
Oh, okay. We are looking at Swatuki Cave. This cave has been subjected to many excavations by archaeologists. So we discovered that the soil was now, the cave floor was now pulverized. So what we did was to stabilize the floor so that the dust should not accumulate on the rock paintings. What we did was to look for slabs around the area, granite slabs, then we did place them on the floor. Okay, so.
Thank you. And so, on this perspective, we can also look at community engagement and educational outreach programs. This is also one way of creating awareness amongst communities, as for example, the demonstration in the picture.
Sorry. This one again, we are running a project funded by the American Embassy together with the UZ and Amagugu Cultural Association. So what we have done, we have engaged the local community, especially the women who are doing the rock art documentation and also doing the paintings on artificial rocks. So we did educate them on how to document the rock art, which is mostly behind their homes. There are lots and lots of rock art sites within the community that are not national monuments. And the next picture, it's on, this one should be on conservation, the difficulties between balance, the difficult balance between conservation and authenticity. Oh, we're almost there. Okay, this rock art was executed inside the river. It was very spectacular when you were viewing it, but the landowner decided to build a dam wall around the engraving. So far, we have been monitoring it, and we have discovered that it's a fading. That's it.
Thank you. So now we are going to put it into a little bit of context. So when we look, for example, at the Cave of Lascaux, when you look at the site and you go there as a tourist, you can argue that the site is conserved on one perspective through the creation of a replica, which then projects a different view of the rock art engravings as it is in the cave or similarly so, while at the same time it brings up a big contestation of authenticity. Because, for instance, if some people, especially heritage practitioners in Africa, they will come and say, for me, perhaps it's not worth it to go to a site if I can't see the rock art as they were created, because heritage is or should be authentic. It's even in the in UNESCO's constitution and so forth. But also, if I then having experienced it, you also have to look at the positives and commend the managers for how they have managed to make such a spectacular replica, because you have to also imagine the investment that was put into the replica to attract so many sites. So arguably then we can say that it is a business, but at the same time it is one very good way to conserve rock art through a replica. Maybe something we can also try to look into in Africa, if or perhaps there are some sites, but I think perhaps very few that I know of at least. So to continue then, you see also this, for instance, it's a state-of-the-art museum you can see also at Glasgow. So you really have to commend the funds that were put into place to conserve this heritage, because also when we went to the site, we could see that I asked if I can take a picture there, sitting there under this cave, just to show the people I was at the door of Glasgow, and I was not allowed to do that. But so it really shows you how much is put into conservation, and it also shows that, for instance, if you look at the number of people that visit the sites, you have to think that these sites are arguably, or not even arguably, it's part of the community. It attracts thousands and hundreds of thousands of people. So it's a successful way of conserving heritage, because even at the original site, there are sensors and so forth around the site, cameras. You know, if you just think about that, it's a very effective way of conserving the rock art. But then you also think, since I can't go in, is it really still inside there, or I don't know. But then I want to make an example of, wait, you guys are not ready for this. It's going to blow your socks off. Now I'm going to show you guys one picture of the many significant and very exquisite rock art we have in Southern Africa. And you have to think what we can also do to promote this better and to conserve it better. Especially, for instance, if you think August, that we have lost some of the very good rock art we have in the Drakensberg. But you guys can close your eyes for a moment. Yes. Can you guys see there is the, wait. Can you see the head? The nose? Yes. The neck? The ram? The back, the tail here? You can see it for real, it is there. Yes. There's the back legs. Yeah, you can see the back of the other back leg. There. Yes, the stomach. Can you see this leg here? You can see it's really the back front leg. And then here in front, you can see the perspective is immaculate, guys. And what you can also see is, it's not only the rock art, you can also see the people who are hunting the rock art. Here's one here. You see the head here? Yes, the arms. The left arm, you can see it, yes. Coming down. Can you see the front leg there? You can see it on the left side, right? Yes. So guys, yes. There's a lot we can do to try and better conserve rock art in Africa, I think. And it's something that I'm sure many people in this room has also written about and looked into. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask, I mean, it's very clear in the French side in terms of this area that a huge amount of money and effort is put into conservation and protection. and a lot of scientific work is going into the conservation and protection. What do we need to do in South Africa to get entities to start doing the same thing? Because our sites are not given the same attention. We see pollution coming in, we see water pollution coming in, we see, well, just air, people, all the rest of it. And there doesn't seem to be that same unit that has formed in order to protect these sites. What do you think we need to do?
Yes. Yes, I think what we need to do is we need to see how we can try and make the public sector combine with the private sector. We need to bring corporates in because, for instance, it's what they are doing in France. So we need to try and bring different organizations in to work on collective projects that can see how we can really improve the state of the current rock art. And it starts perhaps also with incorporating rock art in the curriculum, for instance. I would say so because I think from a young age, education, if students and learners can see the value of rock art, bring the community closer to the rock art. Because, I mean, if you look at the visitor numbers, it's an absolute... if you look at the visitor numbers, there's such a big contrast between the visitor numbers and the actual rock art, because in Africa we have such authentic rock art. How many researchers haven't written about how exceptional this rock art is? It's arguably the best rock art in the world. Yes.
Just also as a response to that question, I think something quite crucial is teaching the public to actually appreciate these sites. I think, yeah, the main way to get these sites, specifically in Southern Africa, to be protected is if the general public has an appreciation for these sites. And something I have debated a lot with my friends and family, especially with the Western Cape, because there are so many sites, is how do you draw the line between, say, gatekeeping sites for their protection as well as teaching the public about them so that they can appreciate them to also protect them. Because the more you teach about them and the more appreciation that people have for these sites, the more they also want to go to them. And like being in the Western Cape, some of the sites I've seen as well, there's a lot of rock climbers, which has been a big issue as well. A lot of tourism in that area has been for these bouldering people to come with their resin on their hands, the chalk, and then climb these surfaces. And then right around the corner, you see these rock art like pictures. And then it's also who's teaching these people, and then they're coming to these sites and they're not even aware of the rock art or they appreciate the rock art. They could be destroying the rock art. But like I said, there's also that line of, how far do we go? Because the more aware they become, the more people who are wanting to go out to these sites. And if we don't have a good means of protecting them at the moment and having, say, fencing set up in front of them so people don't touch the walls, it's difficult because you want more people to know and appreciate, but also it's difficult because you say you don't want like so many 700,000 people now going off into the mountains to go see the rock art if there's no means of controlling groups. And yeah, I don't know, it's just something I've thought about a lot as well. It's something to talk about. But yeah.
Before we go to the next question, can I also just add that I think it has been mentioned before that we have to look at it most critically, politically as well. We have to challenge the government because it has to come from the top. It's no use we trying to change the system of rock art, but they don't want to put funds into it. And also there has to be accountability because, in South Africa, they can pay 20 million rand or 10 million rand to build a statue. Then it's a little bit of a box there in the air, hanging there. So there's a lot of, we really have to look at it from the top and try to make the government of national unity. Yes.
Can you go back to the that exhibition? Yeah, this one. This one was extremely problematic for me because it speaks to the idea of universalism and nationalism, and it even has some pictures from Southern Africa, of Southern African rock art. I don't know if people noticed those finger dots, I think. But what Europeans did was they used this idea of the primitivism in art history with Picasso and Braque, and they took elements of this primordial, childlike creativity of an earlier time in order to create these beautiful masterpieces. And they connected that primitivist notion with Africa, often. So my question is, or maybe it's a comment, of how this idea of universalism, of just saying, oh yeah, look at all these pictures and how they're related, is neglecting or denying the histories and the abuses that have been done in the past. And then also the fact that many of the tours we went on, they said that this is our, like Cro-Magnon is an early human for everyone. So we all have this invested interest in this rock art. It's part of us. And I don't know if they meant us as in French or us as in humankind. But in Southern Africa, it's often the rock art is another culture. It's the other. It's not us. And this dynamic between universalism, nationalism, and maybe even ethnic essentialism is really important to analyze when you are listening to what the French are doing, because people buy into this because they think, oh, okay, well, it's our art. We feel invested in it. But if it's someone else's art that you're not invested in, you're not going to care about it. So it's value there. So yeah, but this exhibition I thought was very problematic.
Just a part of I agree with all you are telling now. Just because I was in the scientific committee of Lascaux 4 various years ago, and in fact, this part of the project, the scientific committee couldn't say nothing about this. This part, this room, especially this room, because the promoter of the project, the department, wanted only to speak with the man, and I forgot his name now. Non, Nicolas Saint-Cyr, mais le gars qui a travaillé sur l'art du 20e, etc. C'est pas Labru, c'est un autre. Bon, bref. The president of department, the old, not the president, actual president, wanted exclusively to work for this room with a famous French art historian who worked about the modernism and how the whether a really confusion between prehistory, between art of Africa, and between modernism like Picasso and all the modern art in Europe. And well, it's a long story, but I agree by what you say. And we were few prehistorians that we would like, who wanted to do another thing of this room, a contrary, whether a perspective more, less global, or globalization perspective of art, but more on specification, and we wanted things in a chronological perspective also, because here all is like an universalism and without chronology, so it's really confused. But it was a political intention in reality. And it's the reason why your remark is really interesting, because you show that 10 years later, in fact, this discussion, this is the consequence of the political decision of 10 years.
May I? Okay, yes. I have a question, and I would actually also, I'll be asking for your opinions, because you are a very diverse panel, so I think I'll get an answer from your own perspectives as well. It is specific with regards to the idea of conservation in line with authenticity. What I would like to just share a bit on, in Namibia, especially from the Heritage Council, when it comes to managing rock art sites, there is a huge contestation when it comes to conservation efforts, because most conservation efforts are just linked to prevent people from directly or actively destroying the rock art, but they don't really prioritize conserving the site from natural deterioration. It's also this idea that any human activity, any intervention that we may have on a site takes away from its authenticity, not allowing the site to be as is. So as a result, our own board currently struggles to make certain conservation decisions on sites with that fear that if you add anything onto it, you might be taking away from its authenticity, even though you are trying to conserve it. So I just want to hear your opinion from your own countries, what you would then advise in such a situation. Even your own personal opinion, Tangeni. Yes.
We are from the same country.
Yes.
Like you saw what we did at Nswatuke Cave. We, the heritage practitioners, are the ones who decide what to do on our rock art sites. After so much consideration, we sit down with different regions, we discuss, then we agree to conserve, like the Nswatuke rock art. We didn't actually clean the dust because we're afraid that we might delete some of the paintings. And there is also another site which has extensive graffiti. The guys from the American Express came to us to say, guys, let's clean this graffiti. But we were afraid and we refused. So at Nswatuke, that is the only conservation site, rock art site that we did conservation of the cave floor.
Lenishwa, since you work for the Heritage Council, I don't know if Curtis touched on the issue of continued excavations, but what do, when people excavate, there's also dust that goes up in the air that might damage the rock art. Do you guys come to the sites regularly to check or something?
We do what we call monitoring and evaluation, but unfortunately we are short-staffed, so we do what we can and when we can.
No, I think that is a very interesting discussion. Yes, but it also comes back to the priorities of the sector from the very top. I think in South Africa, we are also perhaps spending a lot of money on celebrating heritage rather than looking at the critical aspects of conserving and promoting it to an extent where it can be sustainable. Because if we can invest in heritage, we can also attract more tourists, and then it can sustain itself, because there are people going for the rock art, but sometimes because it's almost like if you don't take yourself serious, other people won't take you serious. So it's not rocket science, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think the question that you are asking and the situation that you are in is a very common problem across the world, all across. It's balancing conservation and use. And for me, I think traditionally we prioritized conservation over use, which is not sustainable, because that is why people don't they don't identify with the art for many reasons, for the distance that is created when you don't allow use, but also for the benefits. They don't see the benefits of the art. So personally, I think we need to change that in many ways. But of course, it's difficult. Why is it difficult, especially for our African context, most likely elsewhere as well? Because it's a change of mindset. When you have people who are hardliners, who are conservationists, it's difficult to change the mindset. But another thing is also because some things are legislated, because we have the same situation in Zimbabwe, whereby when the National Museums and Monuments, when they tried to make use of the heritage to make money, they are told that you are a government institution and your responsibility is not to make money out of this. So even the projects that they want to institute, sometimes they die out because they are not supported within the government. So it's a big problem across. The other problem is also because of the fact that we want to do things by the book, by the Venice Charter. I was asking all around when we were going around how the Venice Charter works around here, because I think it's not. The French have tried, they have succeeded in circumventing the Venice Charter. Whereas in Africa, we want to do by the book. The Venice Charter says this, and we can't do that otherwise. So I think it's a major problem across the world. Thank you.
Ancelia, we are afraid of losing the World Heritage status. That is
Thank you. I want to touch on conservation, preservation, and also I'll call it urbanization or developments within the site. I have a case study of my site, which is Mwela Rock Art site. So there was a government decision to expand the water tanks for the local water utility company, Water and Sewerage. And then the site which was chosen for the expansion of these tanks was within the heritage site that has rock art. So because I work for an organization that implements policy in terms of conservation, how do you conserve, which policies do you implement in order to ensure that the sites are conserved, we told the government that we needed to do a heritage impact assessment for the project so that we look at how the project is going to affect the site, because there's going to be heavy machinery for excavations. That means there's going to be a lot of dust. there's also going to be a lot of vibrations from the excavations because it was a big project. So I happened to lead that heritage impact assessment. But the difficulty that I faced is that we were told to go ahead with the heritage impact assessment, but that was not going to change the government project. So whether the impacts are severe or not, the people needed the water because then government has to, what's the word? Government has to see to it that they are delivering on their campaign promises because that's a promise on improving the water reticulation company and ensuring that the community has water now that we have an urban area that is developing a few meters away from the site. So what we encountered is that there was a lot of dust that would be going to the rock art paintings. There would be a lot of vibrations, and from the stones that are moving from the crushing of the other sad part is the material for sinking the borehole was also obtained from the site. So part of the rock borders were quarried because they don't have the rock paintings. But I think you'd understand that when you look at a heritage site that has rock paintings, you don't just look at the outcrops with the painting themselves. It's the entire geological landscape because that's part of the site. That's what makes it authentic because you get this landscape. So I wanted to find out how other countries are managing such challenges because we did the HIA, we submitted the report, and then what we envisioned would be the impacts. That's what happened. We had a lot of dust. We had a lot of outcrops broken into two, and we have failed to remove that dust from the rock outcrops. So how do you balance between ensuring that government projects go on and also ensuring that the sites are properly conserved? I don't know.
Can you?
Actually, thank you for that question. I have a question within her question, but it's then to everybody, not only the group. Like she explained, she gave example of a specific site in her country. Mine is to all of the Southern African countries where we come from. How do we then balance between conserving, preserving, and protecting these heritage sites, given general sites or archaeological sites, without also trespassing or without also limiting development of any kind, which is mining, which is industrialization, which is establishment of whatever infrastructures that need to be developed, given road, electricity, water, and anything else. Question is then, can heritage and mining or any other industrialization happen or coexist within an area or a country like Namibia, for example? Like the balance between the two. And I need that for my thesis. Thank you.
So this is the subject of the PhD of Karina. So please don't give too much answer because she has to fend per herself the answers. But I think it's not anymore exactly presenting rock art sites. We go to another point, but you can still answer. But just keep in mind that this workshop, it is presenting rock art site. And then after, there are also the other groups, but perhaps it's also a thematic that we can have for our next workshop in the RAHMSA project, because let's say the thematics that are defined on the document that we submitted, we can still review this one and think how it can be updated. So who would like to give a little answer to Karina? Yeah, to Karina and Eyzies.
Okay, I just want to generalize. What we have done in Zimbabwe, we have sort of delineated the sites. Then when you delineate the sites, you submit those coordinates to the Rural District Council, to whoever the authority is. They really respect that. When there is a development near a heritage site, they will point out to the developers that don't ever go there because it's a World Heritage landscape or it's a national monument. That's what we have done in Zimbabwe.
And do they respect
the arrest? They do respect. Recently, there was a strategic, a 5-year strategic plan of all the RDCs, and we asked to submit all the heritage sites within our area.
Thank you. Just a little, sorry, it's not exactly rock art related, but it is in Iceland, there are these big boulders that are considered to be trolls. And actually, if there's a road that's coming and reaches one of these boulders, it goes around because they're protected at a government level. So if you come across something that's of this considered the national heritage, it goes around it and then it keeps on going. I just thought that was interesting. Maybe it's something to look into.
I just have a short question. Can you coming back to the giraffe? The giraffe. Yeah. So, yeah. So just to be sure, so this giraffe is in the river, normally. And who have done the wall?
Sorry. The landowner is the one who built the wall around
Why?
the giraffe. He wanted to protect it. He thought the river was actually interfering with the giraffe.
Okay, so it was to protect. And also
according to him, yes, it was so a way of protection.
Okay, so what I think very interesting through this example, because as far as I know, as far as I heard, sorry, in Namibia particularly, where the giraffe is linked to his water. Mm-hmm. Okay, many guides, they explain the giraffe, it's the symbol of the water, particularly in Namibia, I heard that. So here it means that we have a dissociation between the giraffe and the water, even if it is the symbol of the water. And on my point of view, this example, it's really the same as what we have observed in Cap Blanc. Because Cap Blanc, you remember Cap Blanc, it is the horses, the sculptors, which is a shelter. And so to protect the shelter, they enclose the site and they cut also, they dissociate the site to the landscape. And I can imagine, we will never know, of course, but also we are, perhaps we know with more precision that water and giraffe are linked, but I can imagine that perhaps the horses of Cap Blanc, they are linked to the valley. They are linked to the landscape also. So it's just because we try also to do some link between France and Southern Africa. So it's just something that I would like to share with you that for me, at least, it's the same things. Sorry, a last question. So, Juliette, you have another question?
It was also just a quick comment about the protection of rock art sites with the building up of, say, power cables and everything. I know in South Africa, in the National Heritage Act, there's a certain distance that you can build apart from it. I can't remember. There's certain, for a road versus a power cable line, there's certain distances, and it's specific for each context. But yeah, this is just something that I wanted to mention. Yeah.
Thank you so much, group number 2. Last question? Right, last question. Last.
I was just wondering if anyone in any of the countries have animals as threats to the rock art sites, because at sandparks, one of the issues that we have is elephants, and yes, being a big threat towards the rock art because they like rubbing themselves against the rock face. So has anyone experienced that, and are there any suggestive preventative measures to solving that?
Okay, in the case of Eswatini, it's mostly domestic animals, not wild animals, especially the goats, because they like climbing on rocks and rubbing, and also their urine has an effect on the rock. So we try protecting it by enclosing it where need be, so that they don't access or have access to it. Yeah.
About on an animal, ouais. We have in Cavity in France and Spain, and also I think in parce que Laurent il a bossé in a cave in South Africa, I think. We show that in the past, and also actually the bats are really problematic for rock art conservation, for cave art conservation, because they are, comment on dit, they are dejection. Well, made a lot of chemical in the atmosphere of the cave, and generate attacks of the limestone, very important. And so it's possible that a large part of cave art has disappeared in the past, and now in some cavities there is rules between the nidification of bats and preservation of rock art, especially in the Pyrenees, because in a famous cave named Eyzies, it's a big problem, and so there are a regulation between protection of environment and protection of the bats and protection of the cave. It's a deal, well, quite difficult, but there is a good function between these two issues.
And sometimes not. At Elden Cave, for example, there is a real conflict between the protectors of the bat and the protectors of the paintings.